Hey listeners, welcome to another episode of How Did They Get There? In this episode, we are talking to Nick Peters from Zenoot Tv, where we discuss Nick's passion towards manufacturing, his career spanning decades of reporting on manufacturing, and a lot more. Listen in. Started. So, Nick, welcome to the podcast. How did they get there? It's great to have you here. So, do you mind quickly introducing yourself to our listeners?
Not at all, Nishant. It's a huge pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. I've been a journalist all my life, apart from a very brief and terribly failure-ridden spell as a trainee chartered accountant. I went off into the wilderness and emerged as a journalist. Maybe I should have stayed in the wilderness, I don't know. But I've been a journalist all my life. I've worked on newspapers like the Daily Express, the Sunday Times, Scotland on Sunday. Mainly, though, I've been a broadcaster for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, NBC News in America, Independent Radio News. I don't know if they still exist. Used to be the news service for all the commercial radio stations in the UK, and LBC Radio, where I presented programs for a while in the 80s. For LBC and IRN, which were both under the same roof, I was the main correspondent in Brussels in the early 80s. So all this stuff about Brexit and the common market, as it was then, now the EU, of course, is very familiar to me. And then for 14 years, I was a correspondent in the United States, in Washington, D.C., initially for LBC and IRN. Then I was producing videos for the BBC and for ITV, and that's when I worked for the Sunday Times as well. So a fairly peripatetic lifestyle, career covering South America, North America, most of Europe. And then emerged into business journalism when I got back to the UK in the early noughties, I think they call them, and ended up at the manufacturer in 2016 and have absolutely loved it. And I have to say, despite all the fun and games I had all those years traipsing around the Americas and Europe, I get more fun out of reporting on manufacturing than anything else.
That's really interesting, Nick, because I was speaking to one of our guests previously, and they had also mentioned, that we are about the 8th or the 9th biggest manufacturer in the world, yet we are so understated in this country about manufacturing. And you having experience across or journalism across different domains and coming into manufacturing as well. And do you want to tell us a little about your new venture that you have just started?
Yes, it's called Zenoot Tv, which I hope will be the Zenoot bit will be familiar to people in the manufacturing sector. It's Zenoot.com has been around for many years now, run by a former colleague of mine at the manufacturer, Matt Chilton. And when I decided to part ways with the manufacturer earlier this year, I went to Matt and asked if I could license his brand from him, because I reckoned it was a really good platform to have for my video venture, because I wanted, as a broadcaster, to do a lot more television and video around manufacturing. I just felt that I could bring something new to the sector in those media terms. And today being the 29th of July, we launched one day ago. And my world has gone mental since, because people have become quite excited at the product. So it's I'm hoping to really drive the conversation about manufacturing internally as well as externally, because you're quite right. Manufacturing does feel like the Cinderella of the economy, whereas back in the day it used to be belle of the ball. And I just think that it needs to have more confidence, and we need to talk about the good things and deal with the bad things. Find ways to deal with the bad things. I don't mean bad in the sense there's anything wrong with manufacturing, but I'm talking about things like how to increase productivity, how to get manufacturers to invest more in training, and also how to make our voice heard in the corridors of power. No, we have very good representatives with people like UK, and people like Jürgen Meyer and the Made Smarter Commission and so on. But we have to be heard more, maybe locally, in our local communities. Let people know just how valuable manufacturing is to the lives of their communities, jobs, prosperity, and so on.
So, you mentioned about, your new venture as well. And, you've had this career in different industries and manufacturing, total 48 years, as you mentioned. Do you love what you do?
Oh, absolutely. Trust me, I'd rather be on the golf course I would be on the golf course if I didn't love this so much. I get really turned on by manufacturing, and by business generally. As I said earlier, I get more out of it than I used to from interviewing prime ministers, presidents, going to war zones and all that sort of thing, all of which was very interesting and sometimes fun and sometimes deeply scary. But what I love about business is that you get the human experience distilled into one very small place, particularly when it comes to the people running businesses. I mean, there's hope, there's joy, there's a great deal of fear, there's some despair, there's inspiration, sweat, you name it. And it's very distilled, and it's a very human story. So my approach to the journalism around manufacturing is to pick out the human story around it, because that's what audiences relate to most. I think if you're talking about widgets, they tend to turn off fairly quickly unless they're widget enthusiasts. But also because I just think it makes for such drama. I think that you can make manufacturing dramatic. You make stories about it dramatic, and I like to do that. I think, and from the evidence, I think people like what I do. So I very much love it, and I shall carry on doing it.
That's great to know, and it's always interesting to meet people who love their jobs because there are not that many of them as you think there are, really. You've had different roles across countries, and you've had your own initiatives as well. What have you had to do to learn, to adapt to in these different businesses and domains to keep yourself relevant?
That actually is a deeply perceptive question, Nishant, because if I'm to pride myself on anything, it is my willingness to adapt. Now, back in the day, when I was doing radio for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, this was in the 1970s. This was such a long time ago. I used to carry around a huge tape recorder, reel-to-reel tape. Used to carry razor blades on airplanes, can you imagine? And I used to sit on airplanes editing tape, and learning. I had to edit tape quickly so I could get it turned around, ready for radio broadcast. And that being on the road all the time, learning how to use technology to get my broadcasts back to base, moving from tape to cassettes, then ultimately, of course, to digital. And then also learning about computers and understanding how software works, always being ahead of the game. And for this Zenoot TV venture, I've had to learn how to edit video. Back in the day, if you wanted to start a television business, it would cost a fortune because you'd have to hire somebody to do your video shooting and your video editing for you. Well, right now, I'm doing all my video recording in my dining room in front of a green screen. I'm shooting all my video on a phone, on a tripod, getting my interviewees to do the same, and then editing it all together to make it look like a TV show. Now, I do that, and I've taught myself how to do that. And the fact that even after all these years, I'm still teaching myself how to be relevant in the marketplace, I think has allowed me to keep going. I mean, if I wasn't so keen to adapt and to use a horrible modern word, pivot, I don't think I'd have got where I am. So yeah, thanks for the question, because it's made me realize actually just how much I've had to learn, but more importantly, been willing to learn.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, because we've seen it with other guests on the show as well, where they've expressed interest that, to actually become successful at what you're intending to do, and to be able to adapt through changing scenarios such as COVID as well. The willingness to learn is so important, and sometimes more important than having the right talent, because if you have the willingness to learn, you could actually grow that talent a little bit easier. So that was very great, Nick. We'll move on to our second section. So is there any book that you've given most as a gift, or any 1 to 3 books that have most influenced you?
I would say that the book that I give most as a gift is Master and Commander by Patrick O'Brian. Many people listening to this will have seen the movie with Russell Crowe as Captain Jack Aubrey, and Paul Bettany as his great friend, Dr. Stephen Maturin. But the books, and there are 20 and a half, he died halfway through writing the 21st book. The books are a joy for life. I've been, as we say in the game, I've circumnavigated the canon 3 times already, and I just keep reading them because they are perhaps some of the greatest historical literature there is. It's about Royal Navy in the early 19th century and early 1800s, but it's about the deep friendship between these two men, the bluff Englishman and the wily Catalan Irishman. It's absolutely wonderful stuff, and I heartily recommend people buying Master and Commander, the book, and then carrying on reading it, because that is a gift for life.
Absolutely. I'll definitely add it to my own reading list as well.
Good show. I'll send you a copy. See, I keep giving it away.
So, being part of manufacturing, one of the things that I've seen tend to happen a lot, just because of the industry that we're in, is failure becomes, a bad thing, really, instead of being a good thing. Do you have any personal, any failure or an apparent failure that has set you up for a later success, or do you have any favorite failures of yours?
Huge confession time. I've never dealt well with failure, and maybe it was my upbringing, I don't know, but I've always felt ashamed around failure, and failure can lead people to think that, and that's why actually being in manufacturing, it's quite enlightening to see that actually failure can be a positive.
Yeah.
I suppose in the real world, the one failure I'm proudest of is not succeeding at being a chartered accountant, because after failing at that, I went on holiday to the Channel Islands to be with a mate of mine who was running an ice cream van. I had no job, nowhere to go to. I saw an advertisement to be a reporter on the local TV station in Jersey in the Channel Islands. I thought, what the hell? And I applied for it and I got it. I mean, I was 20 years old. Yes, I was 20 years old. Yeah. And they stupidly gave me a job because I was absolutely appalling at it. But they gave me the start that got me where I am today.
That's wonderful to know. And it just shows as well, that a lot of people believe, seeing, people in successful positions, that everybody knew where they wanted to get to. They had a path forged out. But as you showed, that just taking up from one failure, you got into something that now is, led to so many great things. So, is there any learning that you still carry from school, college, or any of your previous jobs?
Well, from school, I left school at 17 with a handful of miserable A-levels. My father was somebody who had very fixed views on things, and he entirely discouraged me from going to university. Mm-hmm. which may or may not have been a bad thing. I don't know. I mean, I am who I am, and I am what I am. I suspect if I had gone to university, I might have become more intellectually confident. I think not going to university always made me feel a little intellectually, what's the word I'm looking for? Lacking in confidence, insecure, particularly around people who liked to portray their intellects at length. So my learning that I would carry from that is allow people, if they have the desire, to go to college, to go to university and learn. I wish I'd done more of it.
That's really great to know. I'm sure that listeners would absolutely find that relevant, because I think it's how the education system is now, and what we see in the real world. It's an important decision to make as well. So you've been in the industry long enough. You've seen different kinds of businesses and people and how they operate. Do you see any stereotype or a bad advice in the industry or in your area of expertise that's generally given?
Well, I mean, in the game I'm in, which is basically I'm a journalist, editor. The stereotype currently is pretty awful. In the general press, people talk about the mainstream media. They talk about fake news and all of that. I don't think I'm in that neck of the woods, and never have been, except maybe when I worked for the Daily Express, but that was a very long time ago. What I would say is that if there's a stereotype I hold about the media, it is that they don't. They're not more inquiring about things like manufacturing. They just assume that, oh my gosh, we don't make things anymore, do we? That's because they've been told time and time again that we're a service economy, that the City of London pays our taxes for us, pays for our GDP and our economy, and manufacturing's nowhere to be seen, which of course is complete nonsense. And they're so uninquiring about us. In the business pages, you never see any industrial reporters like there were when I was a much younger man. And of course, back then, now you realize that they weren't reporting on industry, they were reporting on strikes. Yeah. And as soon as the strikes ended or stopped becoming big news, we stopped having industrial correspondence. Well, why? We still had industry. Yeah. I think there's a kind of laziness, in journalism. I think there are great stories to be told about manufacturing. And that's why I launched Zenoot TV, because I want to tell more of those wonderful stories.
That's really fascinating, Nick. And I completely agree with you that, being in manufacturing myself for the last 7 years, I found it one of the best places to work, and there's so much happening. And it's so much more cooler place to work than I would have initially thought if I wasn't in manufacturing. So there's so many things that you're doing, and now you've launched a new venture. Is there any time that you feel overwhelmed or unfocused? And if you do, what do you do to bring back that focus?
Oh, heavens above! I'm a scatterbrain at times. Very easy to lose focus, particularly in the day nowadays of social media, and particularly, of course, when doing social media is so much part of my business. I mean, that's how I'm attracting an audience, is through social media, particularly Twitter and LinkedIn. It's very difficult. A journalist is by nature something of a butterfly, always attracted to the next bright, shiny thing. And the hardest thing for me in the world is to get my head down and write a good, long, solid article. I actually very much enjoy what I'm doing now, because I'm not writing anymore, except I'm blogging on my own site now and again. I enjoy editing video and making something very nice to look at and informative and so on. So that's giving me a great deal of pleasure. But and I do focus on that. So maybe it's just that I was looking for a new interest to fascinate me.
Very nice. And knowing what you know today, if you had the opportunity to instruct your younger self something, what would that be?
Believe in yourself. Don't listen to what anybody from your parents downwards tell you. Believe in yourself. We all have the same start in life, but not everybody gets the same, goes down the same tracks. And I think that believe in yourself more as a younger, if that was the advice to my younger self. If I was talking to parents, it would be encourage your children more or as much as you possibly can. And I know so many great parents do that already. And be alert, be alive to opportunities, and don't believe that everything has to have an immediate return. Invest in yourself, invest in new education, new interests, new hobbies, new anything. That way, that keeps us, keeps our personalities rich. Don't become a one trick pony or a one track train. Learn how to be many things, and that way people will find you fascinating. You'll find them fascinating, and your life will be fascinating.
That's really interesting, because over the last few interviews, there's a specific book called Range that has come up quite a bit, and this is exactly referring to that. Where the author actually suggests to build, spread yourself across different domains to figure out what are the things that you actually like, instead of just trying to focus on one thing. And a lot of athletes have actually got what they want to focus on through practicing that as well. So, we are in the current situation of COVID-19. And there are people who are graduating at the moment, people getting laid off, and hence they're looking to, either pivot their careers or trying to figure out, how to upskill themselves to keep themselves relevant. Is there any advice you would like to give them if they were trying to look into getting into the manufacturing industry?
Well, are you talking about getting into manufacturing or getting into journalism? Because
both. I would say both, because you've got expertise on both.
Okay, in manufacturing, I think obviously education and for young people, if you're coming out of university and you've got if you've got any kind of talent, you don't have to have full-blown engineering degrees. There are lots of opportunities in manufacturing for people who are not necessarily deeply versed in the technical skills. Manufacturing needs many different types of people. So, if you're coming out of the military, if you're coming out of accountancy, if you're coming out of teaching, if you're coming out of anywhere, you will find a role, a home in manufacturing. It may not be easy to spot at first sight, but do trust me that there are now manufacturers starting their own colleges, for goodness sake, because they don't trust the government to produce enough talented people. We need trainers. Accountants will always find work. The lawyers, HR people. Just think of it, and whatever you do, I bet you there's an opportunity inside manufacturing. As for journalism, I would have to say to anybody thinking about getting into journalism at the moment, you're going to have to love it very much, because A, it's very competitive, and B, it's a very uncertain world out there at the moment. Newspapers on a knife edge, a lot of online stuff, very good online stuff, independent online journalism. If you can afford to, and you've got multiple talents, such as being able to operate a camera, being able to edit video, you will find a home there. I suspect a rather better home than going to any of the mainstream media outlets, because it's a jungle out there.
I think that's great advice, Nick. I'm sure our listeners would, definitely take that on. So, Nick, coming down to our last question, um, we've talked about, how you got to your current position and your experiences. Where do you want to go from here?
The golf course? No. I don't know, Nisha. And you probably gathered that I'm of reasonably advanced years. I don't think I want to retire, although I don't mind telling you, I am an OAP in the sense that I do receive a pension.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to carry on doing this, for as long as the old body holds up and the mind. I don't see why not. What I will be doing, though, is I will be bringing younger people in and training them to do what I do in my company when the situation allows, because I'd love to feel that when I finally do decide to put my feet up and watch some cricket, that I've given the opportunity for some younger people to have a career of their own inside a business, reporting on manufacturing, which I regard as one of the greatest privileges I could possibly imagine.
That's wonderful, Nick. And yeah, I hope everybody can take a little bit of your enthusiasm as well that you have for this industry. So, Nick, thanks a lot for joining us on this interview. It was a pleasure talking to you, and just hearing your thoughts and your experiences through your career journey. Any last thoughts before you end?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground there, Nishant. All I want to say is thank you very much indeed for inviting me to do this. It was a great honor, and I do hope your listeners enjoyed our half hour together.
Thanks, Nick. Hey listeners, hope you enjoyed the episode. Would love to hear your feedback in the comments section, and if you enjoyed it, please subscribe.